Hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to explore the heartwarming story of Huyen and her little garden. From the very first moments, she patiently pulled out weeds and planted seeds, to the way her garden grew into a space of peace, resilience, and inspiration for the people around her. If you find this video inspiring, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. One morning, a light drizzle blanketed the small garden with a thin layer of mist, draping the entire space in a gray veil. Huyen knelt on the damp soil, her hands caked with mud, carefully uprooting wild greens from the roadside and placing them into freshly tilled beds. To her, each tiny seedling wasn't just food, it was a fragile hope, like the faint light piercing through thick clouds. She leaned down and whispered, "Grow strong," as if her words could breathe life into the broken roots. Huyen's gaze swept over the newly sown morning glory patch, her mind conjuring images of lush green sprouts that would feed the chickens she planned to raise. But worry crept in. Would these plants take root in this unfamiliar soil? The rain made the ground slippery, and her steps faltered, much like her life, always teetering between effort and uncertainty. To shake off fatigue, Huyen clapped her hands, the faint sound a small act of self-comfort, pushing aside the nagging cold that lingered in her chest. In the distance, a rooster's crow echoed, reminding her of her goal: a garden, a chicken coop, a new home for her and her daughter. Standing up, Huyen wiped the sweat mixed with rainwater from her forehead. In her resolute eyes burned a silent vow. She would not give up, no matter how barren the soil or how long the rain fell. A cold breeze swept through, but in her heart, a flame of hope still flickered, dreaming of the day these garden beds would flourish, bloom, and bear fruit. Late that afternoon, in the small kitchen, the dim glow of an oil lamp cast light on Huyen's weary face. She stood by the table, her hands chopping lime leaves, their fragrance mingling with the steam rising from a cup of hot honey. The cold clung to her, each sneeze sending a sharp pain through her chest, but Huyen refused to stop. "Maya just recovered. I can't collapse now," she told herself, her anxious eyes glancing toward the corner where her daughter had once lain feverish. She stirred the lemon water, recalling folk remedies. Lemon, honey, and rosemary could heal. But in Huyen's heart, a greater fear loomed. Fear that her daughter would weaken again. Fear that scarcity would trap them in an endless cycle. She took a sip, the bittersweet taste wrinkling her face, much like life itself. Tinged with sweetness, yet laden with hardship. Outside, the patter of rain on the tin roof sounded like the heartbeat of her worries. Huyen looked out at the garden, where the soaked beds lay, and thought of Maya. Her daughter was her sole reason to persevere. Wiping her hands on an old apron, she resolved not to let illness defeat her. Though her body ached, her mind remained clear. She had to stay strong for Maya, for the garden to thrive, for the chicken coop to be built. Each breath was a promise to overcome, for her daughter, for their future. Her eyes gleamed with resilience, like the small oil lamp bravely burning against the draft. As the rain continued to fall, Huyen sat on the porch, her eyes gazing into the distance, letting the droplets pull her back to the past. She thought of her husband, now in prison. His once familiar presence was now a faded memory after 3 years apart. Their bond had grown cold, like the rain-soaked garden, wet but barren. She thought of her mother-in-law, likely unaware that Huyen had left, and her father-in-law, the only one who had ever shown her kindness, now long gone. Regret mixed with pain made her clench her fists. She had once dreamed of a family, but now only she and Maya remained. I must live for myself, for Maya, she whispered, her voice trembling yet resolute. In those dark memories, Day emerged as a rare light, the one who had reached out when she was lost. Huyen glanced at the garden, where she was sowing seeds of hope, and felt a shift within her. Fear and dependence seemed to dissolve, replaced by an inner strength. The rain fell, but it couldn't extinguish the fire of determination rising within her. She stood, her steps steadier, as if she had shed a long-carried burden. Huyen knew that even if her husband were released, even if her mother-in-law came searching, she would not return. This life now belonged to her and Maya. She would build it, shovel by shovel, bed by bed, day by day. Her eyes shone with resolve, like the wind sweeping away the dark clouds above. The next morning, the rain stopped, and the sun broke through, illuminating the muddy path where Dieu approached. He carried a heavy roll of netting on his shoulder, sweat beading on his forehead. Seeing Huyen digging, he called out proudly, "Got the netting!" Huyen looked up, a rare smile breaking across her face, as if a weight had lifted from her heart. Together, they spread the netting and built the chicken coop frame. Each movement, each hammer strike, blended into a rhythm of shared purpose. Dieu worked while recounting his long, grueling day at the construction site. His wages just enough for the netting, yet he never complained. Huyen listened quietly, her heart swelling with gratitude. She knew he did it all for her and Maya. "Why didn't you let me chip in?" she teased gently, but Dieu just laughed and waved it off. Under the gentle sunlight, the coop took shape, sturdy as a symbol of their shared hope. Huyen looked at Day, the companion who stood by her when the world turned away, and felt a deep bond. Each post, each piece of netting driven into the ground was a silent vow. They would build a future together. The sound of hammering mixed with laughter as Huyen teased Day about his stamina. Though exhausted, they pressed on, as if the coop wasn't just for chickens, but for caging the fears of the past. The sunlight streamed through, highlighting their determination, painting a brighter future for the three of them. As the last rays of the afternoon sun faded, Huyen's small garden was bathed in a gentle golden hue. Everything seemed to settle into stillness, with only the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze and the earthy scent of freshly turned soil. Sitting on an old wooden chair in the corner of the garden, Huyen gazed at her labor's fruits and couldn't suppress a smile. The neat rows of vegetables, once barren land, now pulsed with life and vitality. But the story doesn't end with gardening. For Huyen, this garden was a repository of memories, a space where she rediscovered peace after long, exhausting days. In the beginning, many thought her meticulous care for each plant, her removal of every small stone, was a futile effort. Yet Huyen believed that these simple tasks taught her patience, observation, and appreciation for life's small wonders. During days of unpredictable weather, when young plants yellowed or pests appeared, Huyen faced moments of discouragement. But instead of giving up, she researched solutions, experimented with different methods, and gradually gained her own expertise. Each challenge was a lesson, making her stronger and more resilient. And when she saw her plants thriving green, she realized every effort, every drop of sweat was worth it. Huyen's story also inspired those around her. Neighbors passing by would stop to chat, ask for seeds, or share gardening tips. This fostered a sense of connection, warming the small community. Some friends, after visiting Huyen's garden, began growing herbs or greens on their balconies, finding joy in even the smallest pots. What made the garden special wasn't just the fresh produce, but the nourishment it provided Huyen's spirit. Each morning, her first act was to step into the garden, breathe deeply the scents of soil and leaves, and draw energy for the day. In the evenings, after finishing her tasks, she sat under the soft glow of a lamp, listening to crickets, letting her mind unwind. This rhythm helped her balance the pressures of work and daily life. If the first part showed Huyen patiently weeding and nurturing seeds, this part reveals a journey of growth. It's not just about learning to garden, but about embracing slowness, patience, and connection with nature. The message is clear. Sometimes, to find peace, we don't need extravagant or complex things. Just a small corner where we can listen to ourselves. Many watching this might wonder, could I start a small garden like Huyen's? The answer is absolutely yes. You don't need vast land or space. A few pots on a balcony, some easy-to-grow seeds like herbs, mustard greens, or lettuce, and you can begin your own green journey. The scale doesn't matter. What counts is the joy of planting and watching life grow day by day. When your garden sprouts its first shoots, you'll understand the joy Huyen feels. It's not just about fresh food on the table, but the belief that you can create value, nurture a small piece of life. And when you share your harvest with family or friends, that joy multiplies. Returning to Huyen's story, the greatest gift from her garden wasn't the fresh greens, but the transformation in her soul. She learned to slow down amidst life's rush, to be patient and persevere through challenges, to share and connect with others. Above all, she found a place to return to listen to herself, and to live fully in each moment. That's the message I want to share through this story. I hope Huyen's journey inspires you to create your own green space, however small, yet full of meaning, because sometimes true happiness lies not in distant things, but in these simple acts of daily life. Thank you for staying with the story until the end. If this video inspired you, don't forget to like and subscribe to join me in exploring more fascinating journeys. Wishing you a peaceful and energizing day. This is the story of Huyen and her little garden, which began on rainy days when she patiently pulled weeds and planted tiny seeds. At first, many thought her efforts were pointless, but for Huyen, the garden became a journey of patience and a way to find peace. Along the way, she faced difficulties, withered seedlings, pests, and frustration. Instead of giving up, she kept learning, experimenting, and slowly gaining experience. Over time, the garden not only provided fresh vegetables, but also created a bond with neighbors, friends, and with herself. Most importantly, it brought an inner transformation, slowing down, appreciating simple things, and discovering balance in everyday life. Huyen's garden is more than just a source of food. It is a source of inspiration, showing how small acts of care can bring joy and meaning
Họ
to
tin
life.
rằng một mạng sống